Hello, I'm Robin Nott, and I've been singing songs and telling tales for over 40 years in the Kalamazoo area. And I'd like to invite you into a program today about mythical creatures in Michigan and beyond. And in order to go into that place with those mythical creatures, you'll need an imagination. And I'd like to light that light of your imagination with this old lantern from the 1700s. The reason why it's old is because storytelling is older than books. Storytelling is older than TV. It's older than radio. It's older than computers. It was our first language. And I've got this little poem here that goes with this old lantern. It's from Shel Silverstein, and it's called The Invitation. Let me light this light here. If you are a dreamer, come in. If you are a dreamer, a wisher, a liar, a hoper, a prayer, a magic bean buyer, if you're a pretender, come sit by our fire. For we have flax golden tales to spin. Come in. Come in. Come into the woods. Come into the forest of northern Michigan. It's at night. Listen. Listen. What do you hear? The wind? An owl. Maybe the rustling of some dry leaves. It might be raining. Listen carefully. What else do you hear in that woods? In the woods and the forests and the towns and the cities of Michigan, there are stories of mysterious and unexplained creatures and apparitions and occurrences and sightings. And these stories have stayed alive because people were scared into telling them. And they cared to tell them and pass them on. And they're helping to carry those stories through generation and generation of people until they become mythical. Stories about creatures that stay alive through tale. Mythical. Anywhere folks gather around a fire, there are stories that emerge from our collective memory, the memory we have all together as a people. Now, these stories are a cut above your common silly, spooky stories that might happen around a campfire to entertain. Or how about those summer camp fright tales? Yep. They're often dismissed as silly as well. These are stories about mythical creatures and mythical beings, mythical monsters that are respected in communities around our state. In fact, they're in every state of the Union. And they're in every country of the world, too. All peoples, all cultures have their own special respected stories. And they're not joke stories or gag stories or silly entertainments. All over this great mitten state of ours have been some strange beings and sightings all over the state. And here are just a few of them. In a little town near Grand Rapids, Michigan, Ada, there's a story that floats around called the Ada Witch. And it was a woman in white that keeps appearing in a local graveyard. And this story is very old, from the 1800s. And she keeps reenacting her death to tell stunned witnesses that she was wrongfully killed. I used to live in Ada, Michigan, near Forest Hills, when I was in high school. And I heard about the Ada Witch House. So I had personal contact with that story. Or how about up in the UP? There's a wild lumbering town in the middle of the UP called Seney, Michigan. It was a wild place. Lumberjacks, cutting down all that forest up there. There was a large man up in that area called P.K. Snapjaw. He reached mythical status during the log era. He had a reputation of biting the heads off small animals. Oh, that sounds terrible. But his story stayed alive. And then there's a little town of Amble, Michigan, in the giant Manistee River Valley, up by a place called Mythic, the mushroom capital of Michigan, the morel mushroom capital. Amble has a story that's stayed alive for a long time about a giant green squirrel. A squirrel so large that it towers over the villagers that live there. And its chitters echo throughout the canyon of the river. That's a big squirrel, a big green squirrel. What about Holland, Michigan, right on the west coast of our Mitten State? There was a mansion in Holland, Michigan called the Felt Mansion. And after that mansion had fallen in disrepair and closed up and boarded up, there were strange sightings of melonhead, large-headed beings lurking in the tunneled woods nearby that mansion. Ooh, that story came out and stayed alive amongst people for a long time. In Paulding, Michigan, they told of a will-o'-the-wisp, which is a magical light. And it was a floating atmospheric sort of ghost light that resembled a railroad brakeman when he was seen at night. And the brakeman was floating through the area in remembrance of a terrible railroad accident that happened in that area. What about the glowing grave of Martin, Michigan? Martin's just north of Kalamazoo. And it's a legend or a mythical tale about a grave in a small rural graveyard that when the sun goes down, it begins to light up without any sort of scientific explanation. I've had personal experience with that one, too. I saw the glowing grave of Martin with my own eyes. Couldn't explain why it lit up. Mishu Pishu is a very old story from Native American legend. It's about an underwater panther or great horned water lynx roaming Lake Superior, our biggest and coldest lake up there, near Houghton and Hancock, upsetting canoes, missing people. That story's lived on for a long, long time. And stories don't only happen in the woods either. Detroit, Michigan, big city. Not very many trees around down there. They have their own tale of Neon Rouge or the Red Devil Dwarf. And this story's been going on since the 1700s, causing misfortune for anyone who crosses path with it. Now, you've heard about the Devil's Night fires in Detroit. Well, Neon Rouge, or the Red Devil Dwarf, was probably involved in that somehow. There's a whale-tailed horse, a horse-headed lake serpent near the mouth of the Presqu'île River up in Lake Superior. And this serpent is named Pressy for Presqu'île. Some of you may have heard of the Loch Ness monster called Nessie. We have our own, Pressy, up in Lake Superior. And of course we have a Bigfoot, a heavily hoaxed cryptid leaving large footprints all over our wooded imaginations. Many states in this country have their own version of Sasquatch, Bigfoot, the abominable snowman. That character lives on in mythical tales all over our country. So many of these tales are still alive today, and you may have heard of, or you might want to hear about one or more of them. As I'd said, I've had personal experience with the Ada Witch and the Glowing Grave of Martin. And then there's the legendary Dog Man of Luther, Michigan. Let me tell you about Dog Man. Luther is just north of Baldwin, Michigan, which is right kind of in the center of our state, right in there. Lake County. Luther's a little town. It's a little lumbering town. And this story of Dog Man dates back to the 1800s, 1887. Dog Man is the perfect combination of the plausible or realistic and the imaginative or the fantastic. Dog Man truthfully is a mythic tale from the center of our state. Dog Man lives in a place called Luther Swamp. And this is a mythical place, too. I mean, it's really there. It's a swamp in northern Michigan. But if you go into Luther Swamp, legend has it that far enough in, you won't find your way out. And I've had personal experience with that legend. Kind of being lost on the fringes of it before, up there in Luther. The legend of Dog Man, this mythical character, is said to appear every 7th year of every decade, or 10 years. And as I'd mentioned, the first sighting was 1887, and then 1897, 1907, 1917, 1927, and on up. In Wexford County was the first sighting, which is where Luther is. It's right near Wexford County. Over the years, the sightings have involved everything from hunters to farmers to hippies to law officers, and from tracks in the woods to scratches on church doors. And there have been many, many eyewitnesses. And as a matter of fact, in 1987, the 7th year of the 1980s, I caught wind of Dog Man via this Grand Rapids Press front page article about, is there something like this that's possible? This mythical creature standing upright, yet resembling a dog, bounding through the woods in the 7th year of the decade. Well, My experience started in 1987 with Dogman. I was up fishing with a group of people, and we were fishing on the Pere Marquette River and the Little Manistee River, right near Luther, Michigan. And we don't go up to fish that much. We mostly go up to sit around the fire and tell stories and have a good time that way. Every once in a while, we do catch a fish. In fact, legends like Dogman and other legends and things have been made fun of. And I've done my share of joking about them too, Being a storyteller for a long time, shadowy beings and mythical creatures, they're alive as the stuff of stories. I mean, they don't really happen, but until I had a first-hand experience with Dogman, then the whole game changed. In 1987, as I said, we were up fishing. We went to a little place in Luther called Joyce's Tavern to have some dinner. And while we were in Joyce's Tavern, right in the heart of Luther, we noticed that behind the bar wall there it was covered with pictures of Dogman and articles from local papers and larger papers and testimonials and letters and all sorts of things related to Dogman. And I had seen Dogman on the Grand Rapids Press cover, and yet we still sort of joked about it because we were feeling confident that it was just a local story. And we didn't joke about it too loud, though, in Joyce's, because those people believed it. Well, on the way back to our campsite, we started laughing a little bit louder about Dogman. Oh, look, there's Dogman running across the road. Oh, trying to scare each other and laughing. We got back and set up shop around the campfire to have our evening fire. And I had to visit the outhouse, because that's all there was at this State Forest campground. I got up from the fire and walked away from the fire and walked down the little path toward the outhouse, and I realized that as soon as I got out of the firelight, it was pitch black. It was dark. As I walked down the path, I knew where the outhouse was, and it didn't bother me that it was pitch dark. Walking along the path with leaves brushing me and twigs every once in a while, all of a sudden, my body radar, everybody has body radar. It's the limbic system. You've heard it called goosebumps, where the hair stands up on the back of your neck and your skin gets these good goosebumps on them. All of a sudden, I sensed that something was ahead of me in the path. And something was quietly waiting up ahead. Wasn't big. I mean, it wasn't small like a raccoon or a squirrel. It was something large. Wasn't a bear, because a bear was sort of big and bulbous and would be breaking twigs and huffing and puffing. It was quiet and large and still. And I stopped in my tracks. And I trusted my radar. And the first thing that came into my mind, remember this was 1987, was Dogman. And I stayed for a few moments, sizing it up even though I couldn't see anything ahead. And turned around and went back to the fire. And when I got back to the fire, everybody was sitting around laughing at the fire, and they looked up and they all stopped laughing, because apparently the expression on my face said to them that I had seen something. And as I sat down by the fire, I said, there might be a Dogman out there. That was my first encounter with what I believe was Dogman. And then a decade later, in 1997, a friend of mine and I, we took our daughters, who were about 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, we took them up to his cabin on Wolf Lake, which is just a little bit west of Luther. Got a wonderful log cabin there. We're going to have fun water skiing and having picnics and so on. And we also decided we were going to have fun telling scary tales to these daughters of ours to get them all scared. Well, we decided that we were going to take them out in the back of the pickup truck. My friend had a pickup truck, wrap them in blankets, and drive slowly through the 2-track in the forest right near his cabin. And then we'd stop and tell them to listen in the woods and tell them something was going to be jumping out of the woods, and you know, the usual thing. Well, we did that. We bundled them up in the pickup truck and started driving down the 2-track road. And as we got deeper into the woods, there was a pond or a swamp-like pond area over there. And we thought this would be the first spot that we could scare them with. So we slowed the truck down and stopped, and we had the back window open on the cab of the truck, and we spoke through the window and said, "Girls, listen, you might hear Dogman." And we were joking and hoping, maybe they'd hear something. When all of a sudden, from across the swamp, there was a shriek, a cry. Wasn't a wolf, wasn't a coyote. It was Dogman. Almost on cue. Strange. And my friend and I looked at each other in the cab of the truck and thought, whoa, what's that? And so just about when we were going to turn the headlights on the truck again and start going down the road, something large and dark ran across the road in front of us. Wasn't a bear. Remember, bears are round and big and crashing. This was something quiet and tall and dark, and it ran across the road. It was 1997, the 7th year of the decade. Well, in 2007, a decade later, I went up to that same cabin in Wolf Lake and was visiting with my friend. We didn't have our kids with us. Oh, by the way, the kids were petrified, but they loved it. Shrieks of joy. But 2007, I went up to visit my buddy that has the cabin, and we were just visiting on the porch of his cabin that overlooked Wolf Lake. And as I said, the kids weren't there, but we were just having a cigar and sitting on the porch and relaxing and having a good time. It was night. It was a clear night. Stars were out. The moon was out. And as we were chatting about this and that, all of a sudden across the lake, we heard what sounded like coyotes yipping. You know how they yap together and they sing when they pack up at night? And we thought that was interesting. There's coyotes, we noticed. And then the coyotes' cry sort of faded into wolf cries. And wolves howl. They're different than coyotes. It's a longer, lower howl, and it's a little more sort of sad or sorrowful or painful. It's not so yippy and happy. And we listened to that and thought, there is some wolves, coyotes and wolves on the other side of the lake. And as we were listening to that wove into what was more like a roar. And it was a roar or a sound like bears would make. And we thought, why, there's bears. Or a bear up there that's disturbing the wolves and the coyotes. They're having quite a chorus across the lake. And then we heard a shriek or cry or yowl over the bear's voice. And everything went silent after that. And we thought, that must be Dogman. Because we both remembered about that. Well, that was 2007. Well, you've all heard campfire tales and spooky tales and legendary summer camp horror stories and things like that. Or you may have even helped create a scary legend somewhere. Well, those are my experiences with Dogman. And Dogman is a legitimate mythical character or creature in Michigan's history. And I feel I've encountered or had encounters with that mythical legend. There's legends that are born out of stories, imagination without restriction. But what does a legend become when the truth outruns the fiction? The decades come and the decades go, and the people still swear they see in Interlaken and Reed City and Mackinac, there was something looking back at me. Listen to the woods again. Listen. There's that wind. Oh, of course, there's peepers. You can hear those. Might be an owl. What do you hear? Is there a story alive in your forest or your woods? Somewhere in the Northwood's darkness, a creature walks upright, and the best advice you may ever get is don't go into those woods at night. Stories also live through song. There are many songs that tell about mythical creatures, mythical beings, and fantastic and wonderful things. And I've got a couple songs here that have some of these magical creatures in them. First one's by Peter, Paul, and Mary, and it's probably the most famous one. It's about a dragon. Everybody loves dragons. Dragons are an important part of our imagination as a child, and they should be as an adult too. You got to keep those alive. But this is a dragon called Puff, and you've probably heard this song, and if you want to sing along, go ahead too. Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Little Jackie Paper, he loved that rascal Puff, and he brought him strings and sealing wax and other magic stuff. Oh, Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in that autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. When we come to that part, it's easy to sing along. Go ahead. Together they would travel on a billowed sail. Jackie kept a lookout perched on Puff's gigantic tail. Noble kings and princes would bow whenever they came, and pirate ships would lower their flags when Puff roared out his name. Oh, Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea, and he frolicked in that autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. The story goes on. A dragon lives forever, but not so, little boys. Painted wings and giant's rings make way for other toys. One gray night it happened, Jackie Paper came no more, and Puff, that mighty dragon, ceased his fearless roar. His head was bent in sorrow, green scales fell like rain. Puff would no longer went to play along the cherry lane. Without his lifelong friend, Puff would not be brave. So Puff, that mighty dragon, slipped in to his cave. Oh, Puff, the magic dragon, lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Puff, the magic dragon, lived by the sea and frolicked in his autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. There was a story in that song about a dragon and a little boy. Here's another song, and it's a story about a unicorn. And along with dragons, I think unicorns are about the most popular fantastical creatures. This is a story about why we don't see any unicorns anymore. Well, a long time ago when the earth was still green, there were more kinds of animals than you ever seen. They'd run around free while the earth was being born, but the loveliest of all was the unicorn. Oh, yeah. There are green alligators and long-necked geese, and some humpty-backed camels and some chimpanzees. There were cats and rats and elephants, but sure as you're born, the loveliest of all was the unicorn. Now God seen some sinning and it gave him pain, and he says, "Stand back, I'm gonna make it rain." And he says, "Hey brother Noah, I'll tell you what to do. I want you to build me a floating zoo. And take some of them green alligators and long-necked geese and humpty-backed camels and chimpanzees, cats and rats and elephants too. As sure as they're born, don't forget my unicorn." Old Noah was there to answer the call. He finished making the ark just as the rain started to fall. And he marched in the animals 2 by 2, and he called out as they went through, "Hey, Lord, I got your green alligators and your long-necked geese. I got your humpty-backed camels and your chimpanzees. Some cats and rats and elephants, but Lord, I'm so forlorn, I just can't find no unicorns." Well, then Noah looked out through the driving rain, and the unicorns were hiding and playing silly games, and they were kicking and splashing while the rain was a-pouring. Oh, them silly unicorn. And there was green alligators and long-necked geese and some humpty-backed camels and some chimpanzees. Noah cried, "Close the door, 'cause the rain is a-pouring. We ain't just gonna wait for them unicorn." And the ark started moving, started drifting in the tide, and them unicorns looked up from the rock and they cried. The waters came down and sort of floated them away, and that's why you don't see a unicorn today. You'll see green alligators and long-necked geese and humpty-back camels and chimpanzees, some cats and rats and elephants, but as sure as you're born, oh, you're never gonna see a unicorn. Those silly unicorns. Well, I've got another song here that's about the strangest and most fantastical creature you ever did hear about or see. Oh, I got to drop that Irish accent there. Anyway, this one is called, it was from the 1950s, from Sheb Wooley. And it was a popular song when I was a little kid running around a neighborhood in North Grand Rapids. And it's called The One-Eyed, One-Horned, Flying Purple People Eater. Now, that's about as mythical and strange a creature as you ever did see, okay? So, I'm going to sing you this song here about that strange creature, that one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. Hope you enjoy it. Well, I saw a thing coming out of the sky. It had one big horn and one big eye. I commenced to shaking and ooh-wee. It looks like a purple people eater to me. It was a one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. One-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. One-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. Sure looks good to me. I should say it sure looks strange to me. Ah, ooh. Well, it came down to earth and it laid in a tree and it said, Mr. Purple People Eater, don't eat me. I heard him say with a voice so gruff, I wouldn't eat you 'cause you're so tough. That's a one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. One-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. One-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. Sure looks strange to me. Oh, yeah. Ah, ooh. Oh, this song keeps going up. I said, Mr. Purple People Eater, what's your line? He said, eating purple people sure sounds fine. But that's not the reason I came to this land. I want to get a job in a rock and roll band. Yeah, bless my soul, rock and roll, flying purple people eater. Pigeon-toed, undergrowth, flying purple people eater. Oh, flying purple people eater. What a sight to see. Ah, whoa. And then he swung from a tree and laid on the ground, and he started to rock, really rocking around. He did a crazy ditty with a swinging tune. Bee-bop-a-loo-la, a-loom, bam, boom. Oh, bless my soul, rock and roll, flying purple people eater. Pigeon-toed, undergrowth, flying purple people eater. I like short shorts, flying purple people eater. Quite a sight to see, purple people. Well, he went on his way, and that was he know. I saw him last night on a TV show. He's blowing it out, really knocking him dead. Playing rock and roll music from a horn on his head. Oh, that one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. I hope you don't see one. Well, and then again, I hope you do. Those are some songs. Let's listen to The Woods again. Listen to the wind. And remember, the imagination is an enchanted loom. It can weave all manner of mythical creatures. And those stories are important. Because stories kept alive by people all over the world. help keep hope alive, helps us keep believing that something is possible. Thank you, and good night.